people connected to the industrialist, and therefore would really be able to share their experiences, mostly in Europe. I'll prefer that, because that's almost a hot spot. Can I say it? Because COVID activities and the response, and the developing world looking at them, and the changing and almost the structural possibilities of change in the euro system itself. There are so many issues involved, and therefore I would welcome, before and not taking much of the time, I would request Mario to please take over and start the discussion.
Okay, thanks very much, Professor Salim. I would like first to welcome everybody that is listening to us, and to our honorable panelists, to this series of thematic webinars on the topic management of frozen world and melting economies, organized by the Aligarh University Commerce Department. I would like to extend my thanks, together with to Professor Salim, and to the Vice Chancellor of the Aligarh University, for having given us this opportunity to address you with the webinar topic, business strategies and intervention measures during and after the COVID-19. As briefly indicated by Professor Salim, my name is Dr. Mario B. Curato. I'm the CEO of MBC, Management Business Consulting, an executive management training firm based in Switzerland. I will present this webinar together with my colleague Nasser Riaz, who is a senior senior consultant for MBC. Well, I would like to introduce the topic of our webinar by placing a question, that are businesses able to learn from their past mistakes? The reason that leads me to place this question is that in the 1980s, the crisis of the 1980s unveiled not only a financial crisis, but an organizational crisis, which led many businesses to be subject to very stringent crisis management protocols aimed at trying to solve the immediate problem that they were facing, but without following it with change management measures. Consequently, the results of this was that firms 20 years later were facing the same problems as in 1980. So the scope of this webinar is basically to highlight the dilemma that seems to exist between using crisis management or using change management. In other words, what should be the strategy of the firms when facing problems in crisis situation? Should they fix the problem, or they should fix the blame? The blame in terms of understanding what the origin of the problem is. So crisis management basically offers a short-term solution to business immediate problems through the implementation of action plans and protocols that, so to speak, serve to stop the fire from spreading. Change management, on the other hand, offers a long-term business culture transformation solution aimed at changing the way firms conduct their businesses so that they can attain a sustainability objective. So the argument of our webinar is only if firms learn to fix the blame by fixing the problem, they will be able to concentrate on what is the immediate problem, while at the same time identifying and fixing the blame, the origin of the problem, so as not to make the same mistake again. This they can do by combining crisis management with change management. Firms can basically transform themselves, grow, and evolve. Otherwise, firms will be condemned to repeat the same mistakes. So, with this, I just wanted to put the subject of analysis of webinar into context. I will now proceed to go into detail with a presentation called named Firm's Dilemma Between Crisis and Change Management, a consultancy perspective. When we look at crisis management, we can see that it is not particularly a strategy that's been in operation for a long time. It was designed and implemented for the first time in the 1980s to try and tackle the financial crisis, but also to some major industrial and environmental crises. So already in the 1980s, there were signs that the economic system was changing very, very rapidly, and firms were not prepared to either understand or tackle these changes. So crisis management basically is the process by which an organization deals with a disruptive and unexpected event that threatens to harm the organization or its stakeholders. How? By dealing with threats before, during, and after they have occurred, through the identification, assessment, understanding, and coping of the situation from the moment it occurs to the point that recovery procedures start. So at this point, the inevitable question is, what is a crisis? What renders a crisis a crisis? Three elements: the threat to the organization, the element of surprise, the fact that there are no references in the past for this type of situations, and three, the immediacy with which decision taking has to be undertaken. So basically, a crisis illustrates a process of transformation where the old system can no longer be maintained. Therefore, there is a need for change. So change management, then what change management does is that it aims at preparing, supporting, and helping organizations reinvent the way they operate and adjust to profound, rapid market changes. So that, in a nutshell, change management seeks to help people and teams within a firm affected by a crisis to orderly face a cultural organizational transition. So, fixing what's been happening till now is that we've been fixing the problem, but not fixing the blame. And the reason for this is that firms' business culture is fundamentally functional in nature. That means that fixing the problem becomes for firms a priority. The crisis management protocols are adhered to because they represent action plans as to how to behave to solve the immediate problem. And finally, decision makers rely on the roadmap to identify and solve the problem. While crisis management, through its protocol of actions, helps to give the impression that the problem is solved, then fixing the blame becomes secondary. However, but since you cannot fix the problem if you do not fix the blame. So that means that unless crisis management protocols are complemented with change management strategies, firms will remain unprepared to face the next crisis. So how can the problem be solved from a consultant's perspective? Well, from a consultant perspective, we suggest that firms will require not only to implement a roadmap that leads to changes, but for a business culture transformation to help the implementation of those things. In other words, there is no much point in having a roadmap regarding how to proceed to solve the problems if those that have to apply those sets of regulations and indications or protocols do not believe in them. So combining crisis and change management becomes a priority. How can this be done? By linking strategy with execution. By doing this, the deployment and ultimate realization of the expected benefits of implementing operational protocols, i.e. crisis management protocols, will be materialized, but only if they are backed up by a cultural transformation. So, to conclude, unless there is this linkage between strategy and execution, firms will be unable to face and adjust to the new market conditions and therefore deal with the crisis that will be coming. And two, as long as they do not link strategies with execution, firms will be facing a stop-go phenomena as the number of crises in the future will multiply. And therefore, firms will be unable to develop in a sustainable manner. And finally, as firms become unstable, this will render the whole economic system unpredictable and therefore requiring major transformations. So I hope with this to have given a general kind of perspective of what is, from a consultant's point of view, the fundamental problems that firms face when dealing with crisis situations, and helps us understand why is it that 40 years after the 1980 financial crisis, we are facing the same type of problems, and we're seeking to solve those problems in exactly the same way we did 40 years ago, in where the perception that the short-term perception that the problem is solved is just a false impression that there is no problem again. Okay, so with this, I leave the word to my colleague Nasa, who will give a more focused perspective on how specifically SMEs.
Well, thank you, Mario. I think you have raised a very valid point that two things are there: crisis management and change management. Because whenever there is a crisis in a society, it has to be taken up front. And of course, when there is a crisis, there are structural changes in every society, whether it is economic, whether it is social, whether it is political, whether it is any sort of thing, but a crisis would always lead to some structural changes. And if those structural changes are strategically managed well, then I'm pretty sure that the war could be won over. This is very correct. And as a consultant, you rightly pointed out that it is mainly about the
Hello, hello, I've lost you.
is a natural calamity, and
Yeah,
the society and the environment and the countries, nations, or the humanity has to face it. There is no option. There is no way out. But
yeah,
managing the change is extremely important. Managing the change through right strategies, through a proactive action of the government and the individuals, could only possibly lead to a very systematic evolution from this state of crisis, and we would be able to nurture our respective nations out of this crisis, maybe in a V-shaped recovery curve, where we would be able to build up the recovery very fast. And even if at all it is not V-shaped, at least U-shaped recovery would be forthcoming. Uh, I, uh, your point of view is fantastic, Mario. Thank you very much.
thank you
I
very
would
much.
request Nasser Saab to please, what is your observation?
Yes. Okay. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Dr. Imran Salim Saab and Dr.
My
Nawab
pleasure.
Saab, for inviting me this. Yes, I agree, but here I like to make a little clarification that
Sir,
the crisis that we are facing now, this is not an ordinary crisis.
very
You
true.
see, the crisis has two aspects. One is the humanitarian aspect, another is the business aspect. This is the first time we are facing this crisis where the damage to infrastructure in form of like building machinery or something is not that severe. It is the damage to the humanity, the humans. So since the humanitarian crisis needs time to recover, which will be a very long time in this case, therefore the business sector also needs uh, time to recover. So here we are not talking about a calamity or earthquake or flood, which comes in a certain times and that ends in a certain times, and most of the time it damages the infrastructure, roads, supply chain. Here we are talking about humans, so that makes this crisis particularly very, very, you can say, uncertain. So there's an environment of uncertainty that we are dealing with. Dr. Mario has very rightly talked about crisis management and change management, which are definitely required by especially the small and medium enterprises, which is our focus of our consultancy. We advise startups, small and medium enterprises who are going through the crisis. So my focus will be to make some recommendations and highlight some of the points that small and medium businessmen, if they're listening to me, which can be a handy tool for them to continue in this crisis and then come out of this crisis and then continue. So what I'm essentially talking about is a business continuity plan. There are various aspects of this business continuity plans and various forms, but here I will be talking about especially in context of this pandemic. So first of all, this business continuity plan that I'm going to make some recommendations, let's us agree on one thing. First of all, there will be no such thing now business as usual
Very true.
for a very long time. I hope everybody agrees.
Fantastic. Very true.
We are not talking about a business as usual after 6 months, maybe 3 months or whatever. We are talking about something really very, very, it's a traumatic, it's a dilemma. Number two, we are not talking about the continuity of the old business models. We have to redefine our business models, which I will tell you a little bit later on. Number three, we have to set a new norm. Forget about the old norms of doing business that we were doing before this outbreak comes in. We have to redefine our business model, and then we have to set a new norm, which I'll explain to this. So the business continuity plan that I'm going to talk about briefly will be focused on how a small business can survive during this period, which is a lockdown period, which I don't know when it's going to end, and how once let us assume that it ends, then how are they going to recover and how they're going to continue their business plans according to their previous pre-pandemic scenario. So in this regard, what I feel that in my point of view, that the owners of the small businesses, enterprises, have to now sit back and rethink. They have to redefine their profitability goals. They have to redefine their expenses. They have to redefine one. These things are going on, but one most important thing that they are going to relook at it is the human resource aspect. The human element is very much going to play a big role, because here we are talking about pandemic, which is directly related to humans. So we are talking about people who may not turn up to work. We are talking about uh, scarce deficiency of skilled labor. We are talking about unavailability of the people in the hours that you want them to work for you. So this whole scenario becomes very complex. So first of all, that I like to know, like to tell you about one more thing, that this business plan that I'm going to talk about briefly, I'm talking about minimum resources requirement to stay operational. That is what I feel that many organizations going to need, that how they're going to operate with the minimum set of resources. Then, as I talked about redefining your business model, that also requires some changes. That is very rightly pointed out by Dr. Mario, that change management and crisis management are going to go a very long way in hand to hand in dealing with situation. Because of these things that I'm going to expect you to understand this, that in my opinion, there are 8 areas which are going to be affected as far as the small and medium businesses are concerned, whether it's services or retailing or whatever. The situation somehow in general will be the same in every country, whether it's in Asia or Europe. The companies will be facing with some new scenarios. What I can say, that number one is reduced demand. The demand, they should not expect will be for a very long time the way they want it to be. So they will be facing with a reduced demand. Number two, new regulations in place. There will be new set of regulations implemented by all the governments regarding health or whatever, infrastructure or operations, whatever. Supply chain management will be interrupted. So they should not expect a very smooth flow of supply chain management. It will be definitely impacted, because the suppliers are also facing the same dilemma, that access to markets, the roads, those lockdowns and all that thing will definitely affect the supply chain. Then there will be surge in unemployment. So all the companies that are serving certain area or certain segment of the market, they will be facing a rise in unemployment, which means the disposable income of the consumers will go down, which means that it will affect their pricing. Then there will be a global as well as local global recession that everybody's talking about. One more very important element, the business environment will be becoming very uncertain. And by uncertain means that they will not know what's the outcome going to be next, how they're going to pursue their business goals next. So we are facing a very uncertain business environment. Then we are talking about a decline in the overall distribution system. As you all know, due to lockdown, almost all the shopping malls, supermarkets, hypermarkets have shut down. Only now they've started opening some small retail outlets. So we are facing with the at least a decline in the sale distribution. Then important thing, the companies have to find out how to deal with emergencies, how they should design some standard operating procedures if these emergencies come up again and again. So these are the few impacts, or I can see, that will affect the businesses, especially the small and medium enterprises business, because of their less resources, limited cash liquidity position, they are going to take the blow very severely. The bigger corporations, probably, I don't know really, they will have a buffer. They will have some kind of cushion available to them, but the small and medium enterprises will be directly exposed. So this is the impact. Another thing that I like to put on as far as the redefining of the new business model is concerned. Now, as I said earlier, that forget about your profitability goals. Now it's a chance you have to take how to survive. Because let me put this for the interest of the general public. What we talk about pandemic comes in waves. I've studied some pandemics in the past, in the last 300, 400 years in Europe, that pandemics comes in waves, usually in 2 to 3 waves. Each wave is separated by 6 months period. And each wave continues from 6 weeks to 8 weeks. Then it comes again. So normally a pandemic takes about 2 years to come and go. Even if we bring in a vaccine today, even that is not the not change the situation, because when the vaccine is done in the lab, it takes 1.5 years to test trials in the clinics, and then another 6 months or a year to get the approvals and get it to the manufacturing and get it back, get the vaccine into the hospitals. So we are talking about very, very safely. I advise to everyone that let's talk about 2 years from now. The things are not gonna, I mean, it may go worse, it may improve, I don't know, but we are talking about the time frame of 2 years. Now, in this regard, my advice as a consultant to the small, medium enterprises, to the owners, managers, directors of small businesses, that they should look into a few things instantly, or start taking interest in few practical things that they need right now. Number one is they should watch for any government aid or any government facilities that are being announced by the government to subsidize their utility bills or to provide any kind of assistance within their own country. So look at the government aid. Number two, start working on customer relationship management. Your customers need you more than ever, and you also need them more than ever. So start redefining your customer relationship. Direct your staff or managers to start working on making contacts with the customers, assuring them of supply of products or whatever. Number three, conserve cash. Liquidate all your securities or wherever you have invested the money, take it out and conserve your cash. Do not make any investment right now. Do not hold on to your extension projects. Hold on to your any expansion of market. Just conserve your cash. That is the main area. Then invest smartly. If you have to invest, of course, you have to grow, you have to invest. Then invest smartly. Do not invest in any area where you cannot get control, or which you have to see if it is directly impacted by this epidemic or not. Then focus on your core competencies. Now, this is one area that I like to elaborate a little bit more, that every firm has some core competency, whether it is in production, whether it's in supply chain. So you focus on how you can use this core competency to help you in surviving the current situation and to continue in the future. So see what are your core competencies are. Do you supply well? Do you manufacture well? Do you, what your services are? Is your quality your core competency? Whatever. Then you have to work on one more thing, that is your people. You have to seek your people, the people who are working for your companies, how motivated they are, how it has affected your culture. Are the people are working as a team or they are working as individuals? This is very, very important aspect of your organization, whether you have a staff of 10 people, 5 people, 20 people, whatever. See the human resource aspect, because that's the aspect which will be affected by this pandemic. Then marketing cost. You have to lower your marketing cost by designing some activities which you can do, and then rest of the activities you can outsource. For example, you know that you can manufacture, but delivery you can outsource. So this will help you to save your cash and to make your operation more efficient with a limited staff. Here we are talking about limited staff. This is a basic assumption that from now onwards, 6 months, 1 year, you will be working or you will be looking at operations based on a limited stream. So this is the one of the area that we are looking for that. Now, as far as your practical implementation of your business continuity plan is this, that keep one thing in mind: you are not going to come out of this crisis very soon. This crisis is not going to come off in 3 months, 2 months. As I said earlier, we are looking at 2 years time frame. So keep that thing in mind. So in this regard, I recommend as a consultant to that do 5 things. These 5 things, I should say, should be the basis of your. I cannot give a generic business continuity plan because every company has its own environment, has its own limitations, has its own constraints, whatever. But what I can do is I can give 5 important tips, you can say, or advice as a consultant that you can put it in your continuity business plan next time when you meet with your people. That uh, number one, these are the elements of the business continuity plan that I'm going to give you. You have to look at this again. You have to redefine them. That is your personnel, your equipment, your availability of the assets, what assets you have right now, then what kind of backup resources you have in terms of people, money, technology, whatever. Business commitments. Look at your past, present, and the future business commitments that you have or you feel that you are going to have with your customers. Then your finance and accounting. Look at these operations again, that how you can plan your finances efficiently under these constraints, because you're looking at 2 years of down slow. Then what kind of emergency procedures you have in case this virus breaks out in your company or in your organization. Look at those standard operating procedures and how you can respond to unexpected emergencies or unexpected outbreaks in terms of your products, in terms of your services. So this is the uh, basic structure of my advice as a consultant. So in conclusion, I would say that in conclusion, I have 5 recommendations that I would like to put forward, which is, of course, my personal opinion as a consultant. You can agree with it, or you can disagree with it, or you can twist it according to your own. Uh, One is uh, position yourself. See where do you stand in terms of resources, market, sales, whatever now, and project yourself how you will do it in the next 6 months. I think 6 months projections are fine. So you can first make a 6-month projections, then 1 year. So see where your position is, how you're standing out with your customers, with your competitors, within your industry, within the government. What is your position? Number two, trade-off. You should start working or start looking at some list of trade-offs, that what you can gain now or what you can forego now in terms of what you can gain in the long term. So trade-off is very important. Culture and identity of your brand and your companies. See how this pandemic is affecting your culture within the company, and how this pandemic is affecting your standing of the brand in the market. How customers are responding to your marketing promotions, what you
Yeah.
need to change or fine tune in your marketing and sales pitch. Number four, new projects and opportunities. I believe every crisis, strictly from the business point of view, I'm not saying there's a humanitarian crisis. No. See what new opportunities have been arisen. New opportunities means how this pandemic has created any new scenarios. Look at them. Maybe there's some new opportunity for you. Maybe there's some new diversification waiting for you. Maybe there's some little or small or big. That's not the problem. See how new projects can come up. And the last is preparedness. You must prepare in your company, in your mind, with your staff. You should be prepared for the worst to come. I'm very much I don't give I'm not giving some optimistic views. Let's be very realistic. Let's be very candid about this, that we are heading towards an economic downturn, which some of my friends and colleagues are saying will be like Great Depression. I don't know. Maybe the God will shower His mercy upon us, and the things will start going good. But to be on the safe side, let's talk about worst case scenario. And these things that I've talked about in the business continuity plan, uh, talk it with your directors or partners, with your staff, and see how you can work out, because this thing can only be solved with planning. The short term or long term, what's it? And as I said earlier, new norm. We are facing a new norm. Forget about the old norms. This will be not a business as usual, as I said in the first part of my presentation. So think in these terms. It's not a business as usual. It will not be a business as usual for the long time to come. And we have to redefine our business model. And we have to think about that. We have to plan accordingly. Thank you very much. This.
You can't hear
I'm
you.
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Thank you, Nasir Saab. You have really put me in a student mode. Listening to you, so lucid and so simple, but straightforward, was really fantastic. I think the message is very clear that the problem is not a very small problem. The crisis is there to last, and
Yes.
therefore the question is that of survival. Am I correct, sir? It's
Yeah.
not about making profitability. It is not about making business. It is about holding on yourself, holding your breath to stay on, to survive. Whether it is a physical survival, whether it is an individual survival, whether it is a business unit survival, any sort of survival should be the basic objective. And in order to survive, I'm sure that we really have to think in a very holistic way, where we have to look at the employees, where we have to look at to keep them motivated. We have to keep connected with the customers, so that whenever things revive, whenever there is little demand, we get a catch of that demand. Then we have to also keep abreast with the production line and things of that kind. Forward pass, backward pass of any type of supply chain management will have to be in tune, so that whenever there is an opportunity, we can encash upon. And to cap it all, we must ensure that our pockets do not have big holes. We have to get hold of the basic cash with us, so that whenever there is an opportunity which emerges, we can really, I mean, get hold of it, and we can encash that. We can make use of the opportunities emerging, because there will be very fewer opportunities in near future to come. And any organization which misses it could be difficult to survive. We have some observations from the audience. For instance, Dr. Lauren has suggested that perhaps this could be a very good time, very opportune time, when the companies, in terms of giving, maybe they are forced to give less of salaries, or things of that kind, but they can make the staff some partner, some bonus shares may be given, and the ownership may be given, so that they stay connected, the best of the employees of the organization. Or maybe if we have certain government type of big buyers, then we can have, and we can plan out some possibility of having a relationship with them, having a partnership with them, something of that kind. However, there is a question from the Indian perspective, and even I would like to look forward from the Swiss point of view, that how do you see that very small businesses, which may not have enough cash, which may not have the ability to keep connected with the employees and the customers, how would they survive? And what is the potential? What is the possibility?
Well, I think from the Swiss point of view, this is a country that does not have that many raw materials, natural raw materials. So therefore, it relies a lot on its human potential, which luckily enough for this country, it has developed throughout the years, and now it has a very highly specialized and well-reputed labor force. Now, in terms of the small, very small enterprises, I think that the present crisis, and linking it with the question of Dr. Lauren, it is the time to reinvent, for firms to reinvent themselves and pursue a line of doing things in a different way, as is said in the technical jargon, think outside the box, so as to pursue things in a different way, because the old way of pursuing things is obviously not working. Therefore, this type of crisis are an ideal opportunity to think about how things can be done differently, but not only from the perspective of the executive, but also from the perspective of the employees. The nature of firms and how we understand firms to be today are different from what they were seen or perceived scarcely 40, 50 years ago. Firms are no longer a unit of production, but a social unit. Therefore, the organizational structure of the firms will play a major role in the way they are able to become flexible so that they are able to survive and sustain their activity in the long run over the number of crises that are likely to happen over the years.
Well, we have another question which says that in case of India, basically they are asking where not enough support system is there, and how do these small cottage micro business survive? I think that in near future, in case of India, the government should really, if they have to augment the economic activities of the society, I strongly believe that government will have to come up with certain plans. Because on the one hand, the likelihood of the increase in the government expenditure and fall in the future revenue of the government streams is likely to be there. But during this period of COVID, all the budgeted expenditures have been saved by the government. And I think they should have some basic money to be diverted towards these type of small businesses, which will be generating a lot of employment and hence contributing larger aggregate demand, because the micro section of the society has a lot of propensity to consume. The propensity to consume is much higher when compared to propensity to save, and therefore activating the micro business in the economy should be the priority of the government. And secondly, on individual level, the business should look for the small innovations and inventions, what are they can do and do survive in the market. The strategy is that they have to keep on waiting. They will have to really evolve something in a way that ultimately whatever small demand is created, they are able to capture it. Nasir sir, is that okay from your perspective?
Yes, I think that the government, I agree with you, the government has to come up with some kind of plan. What thing that comes in my mind, that the first thing that the government should do is this, that they should subsidize, or they should waive off, not waive off, maybe they can subsidize the utility bills. The small companies and the small businesses, their payments can be deferred for 3 months, let's say, the gas, electricity, water bills, or they can be subsidized by 20 to 30%.
Exactly.
That's the one thing that the government can immediately do.
Yeah.
That is my
That's very correct.
idea.
Certain strategies need to be evolved. I agree. Yes. Secondly,
Two,
there is a question. Yes, please. Yes, Nasir. You were saying that. Please,
second thing that I would like, the government should also provide some kind of tax relief, like sales tax.
That's a very good point. Yes.
Something
Very
also,
valid.
there has to be some concrete actions, because this thing is definitely going to stay. And the government, actually, the reality is this, the government itself does not have any time span that how this thing is going to end. Therefore, the government is reluctant to commit its resources for an indefinite period. if there is some period in front of government, let's say 2 months, 3 months, then they can do. But right now, the governments are reluctant to commit its resources when the situation is not very clear and they don't know when it is going to end and how much it is going to be big. So that is a big problem, that the governments are not coming up the way they should be to help the small companies, small businesses.
We have another very good question, that since this is a almost closure of the foreign trade, and therefore India being an agrarian economy has got hold of its crop and the producers, and therefore the price level is reasonably low when compared to we used to export. So now the question is, okay, what is the likelihood of inflation in near future in the post-COVID scenario?
Yes, I think that this is a very valid question. See, the thing is this, that when we talk about inflation, we are talking about a general increase in prices over a longer period of time, all over the country. It could be, generally it is taken as 1 year. So there's a lot of speculation going on regarding the general price level, regarding the inflation level. Not a definite answer has come up, that how the present inflation level is going to hold on. Are they going to go up or are they going to go down? Because nobody really knows that how deep are the economic effects of this pandemic will be. And we are still not reaching the peak. The number of deaths as well as the number of new cases are still increasing. And it looks like that we are not coming near to the flatten out of the curve of this pandemic. So I don't know, really, I cannot comment on this, that how inflation will take shape.
May I just present a point of view of mine?
Yes, sir.
See, as I see it, the price level at the moment in the Indian economy is for two reasons. One is that we are not being able to export. That's one thing. But more important and more vital is that lack of urge of demand, because people are reluctant. They are just buying only what is most required.
But is this creating a surplus situation?
Yeah, of course. But let me tell you what is happening, and therefore the price level at the local market, it is very low. But then what I think, which is very vital, that as the COVID end up, as we start building up, then in order to augment the demand, the government will have to push in money. The government will have to come up with incentives to the small scale sector, cottage and micro, and which has a, I insist again that this is the section of the society which has a very high level of propensity to consume, and this propensity to consume will increase the velocity of the money, and with the increase in the velocity of money, naturally the chances of increase in the inflation is almost indispensable. See, initially, the economy may lead into hyperinflation, and then gradually, ultimately, it will lead to recession. So there will be a W type of curve, that where initially, when the government start building up the money and start the packages and support system, then possibly there may be a run of the price level. But naturally, a hyperinflation would ultimately transform into depression, because then the manufacturing would be neglected by the people, and hoarding will start taking place, and this will jeopardize whole of the economic activity and will shun the confidence level of the masses of the consumers within no time.
Yes, I agree.
And therefore a lot of volatility will be there in the market. Initially the price is being low, then there will be a case of almost hyperinflation in the economy, and then the economy will fall into a state of recessionary position. This is my observation.
Yes, right now what I see, that the market equilibrium has been highly disturbed, basically due to the downward push of the demand curve.
That's true. That's true.
What is your opinion about that? Since demand curve is being pushed downward, how do you see the supply side curve? Where do you see it moving?
See, initially, my point is,
with the price?
Initially, when demand is not there, investor would not be interested into put in and go for manufacturing. So there will be no employment. So this hyperinflation would actually jeopardize the demand and supply both. Because immediately the motive and the approach of the businessman would be to go for trading in case of hyperinflation rather than taking a gestation period of manufacturing. And therefore,
yes,
in the long run, employment will not be generated. And the economy, I strongly believe, this is my perception and very strong belief, being a student of economics and commerce, I strongly feel that economy is not driven by money. Primarily, economy is driven by the confidence level of an individual, of the customer. If I'm confident, I'll buy things, I'll take loan and buy things. If I'm not confident, I have my money, I'll not spend.
Can I make just
Sure, please,
an observation? At least to take the other side, the position, I believe that fundamentally the crisis has created or is going to create a recession. First, and in our recession, this is the nightmare of the investors who will see no possibility of return in a recession situation. So therefore, taking up the type of recommendations that we are suggesting in terms of inducing government to expand aggregate demand in order to boost confidence and reduce the time the economy is in recession so as to bring back confidence so as to build up demand, then I think that at least in the short run, once the ghost of recession has been left behind, there will be a process of recovery. Of course, there will be a slight increase in inflation, but as to whether that will develop into a massive hyperinflation, I have my doubts, because if anything, government action of promoting aggregate demand through government expenditure, expanding government expenditure, is basically to stimulate the demand and reactivate the economic activity in the short and medium term, as it happened during the Great Recession of the 1920s. Thank you.
Well, Mario, we are running short of time. So the last question is from, and it has a lot of relevance to your economy, especially, is from the tourism sector. How do you see the future of tourism sector in Switzerland and across the world?
In Switzerland and in Italy, they are extremely worried.
Let me be precise that how fast you are going to invite me.
At least not before 2021.
So what is the likelihood? What is the likelihood of this tourism sector?
No, the problem will have to be seen as to how the recovery process takes place. The problem is that the tourist sector is made up fundamentally of very short, very small family sectors that have family businesses that have hotels, restaurants, bars, etc. Plus another set of activities linked to transport, amusement, entertainment, and so on.
All sort of industry.
The problem now with the lockdown restrictions is that even if, as they're trying to do now, open up the certain aspects of the tourist sector, it becomes very difficult, given the fact that most businesses are small. Therefore, for them to open under the present regulation and restriction, it is uneconomical. So therefore, you cannot expect a restaurant of with 30 tables to open up following a restriction that allows only 10 to 15 tables to be served at a time, or bars to offer drinks and coffee following the 1 meter, 2 meter distances.
Social distance. Nasir
Becomes
Saab, what is your observation, Nasir Saab?
Yes, I think the tourism industry is going to suffer a lot, and there will be very long periods of recession in the tourism industry,
I agree.
because the social distances is one thing. When we talk about tourism, we talk about people traveling, airports, connections, flights, restaurants, cafes, like Mario was talking about. And I feel that the tourism is going to go through a recession, and the recovery period will be, I don't know, it will be very, very slow. And like Mario said, my concern is the small businesses again in the tourism industry. There are many eateries, cafes, restaurants, small lodges, small guest house, where an average, we are talking not talking about 5-star accommodation, where average tourist goes, and they offer a good reasonable price for wine and for food and for everything. That is going to suffer a lot, because the governments are going to take a very strict policies towards tourism. I think in the future they're going to make it more strict. They're not going to open up. Maybe the other lockdowns can open, but the government will maintain its very strict policies on the tourism. That is my view. I don't see any recovery in the next 6 months or 1 year period as far as the
At
tourism
least.
is concerned.
Professor Dr. Nasir, before
Sir.
you conclude, I would like to interrupt here. Not in fact interrupt, but I am slightly scared. In the beginning also you said that this Corona COVID-19 is going to last for another 2 years. And I also came to know through some other sources also that another phase of Corona is going to start probably from the November itself. In the light of the discussions made by you, Professor Imran Salim, Professor Mario, what I have got to know that from March 2020 onwards, there is a global recession. And this COVID-19 pandemic has induced market stability. And due to lockdown, what is happening? This sharp rise in unemployment. And as you pointed out rightly, that there is stress on supply chains also. There is a decrease in the government income and expenditure both. And recently we discussed that there is a collapse of the tourism industry, there is a collapse of the hospitality industry, there is reduced consumer activity. And Professor Imran rightly said that in the beginning, in the morning session, that the food expenditure has gone up. And because of the increase in food expenditure, there is plunge in fuel consumption also. Of course, the petrol is not being used, but gas and other things are being used. And that's why, because there is a rise in the LPG sales also these days during the lockdown period. In short, I have my observation that whatever is happening all over the world. In the beginning also I was discussing with Mario that what is the status of lockdown. And whenever I talk to anybody who comes in this panel, I inquire about the lockdown situation. The lockdown situation, as invariably I've been pointing out, is I fail to understand sometimes is a solution to the problem or the problem itself. Because when it comes to people, when I see people in pain, it really becomes very painful to see them. I see people standing in queues because we are living in India. India is a poor country. We have a large number of poor people. So in the morning we go outside, we find long queues of people waiting for the food items being distributed sometimes by the government, sometimes by the philanthropist people. And at the same time, sometimes we see that poor people, they are crying also. Sometimes we see that people who are traveling thousands of kilometers from their workplace to their hometown, some of them are dying also. So my question to you all is that what do you foresee in future? As you say that this kind of situation is like to continue for another 2 years or 1 year. What do you expect? Is lockdown the solution to the problem? Like in India, we have a very strong immunity system. So I don't think people will die because of the corona as compared to if you compare with the problems that they're facing because of the food and because of the travel, because of the recently one train rammed by around 16 passengers. Like this kind of things are happening. So there's lost human lives in a number of ways. I would like to know from you what you see in the light of your experiences is going to happen in the future.
You see, in my opinion, I feel, you see, Dr. Saab, always have this thing in mind that the fear of unknown is worse than the fear of a known. This is the one thing that people are fearing the unknown. We don't know the outcome of this. and we don't know that's making the people suffer, that they don't see any. The nature of crisis is very much humanitarian, and people are suffering, like you said, long queues. And what I see that soon an average household will run out of money, and they will
Already they have lost. Already they are out of money because the daily wage
already
people are already short of
they
it.
will not they will run out of food. And the government has a capacity. They cannot accommodate everyone. They cannot serve everyone for a indefinite period. So if you ask me, what do you see in the future, I see that if this pandemic continues like this and it does not subsidize itself, then I see a lot of microeconomics level and household unit level crisis. And those crises could be a very big social unrest, maybe the suicides, breakups. I don't know. I'm thinking
Very
about
true. Very true.
all kind of bad things are coming in my mind. I don't know, because this is very very traumatic situation we are in, and unless from God something happens, I don't know. Maybe my learned colleagues can have more highlight on this.
Can I make one observation? I strongly feel that a recession is now almost indispensable. It is a writing on the wall. See, through lockdown, we had just been able to delay the crisis. Otherwise, how do you meet the infection? You cannot. It cannot be done. And we have started opening up back. 2 days back, my area was quarantined, and today it is all open because of the social pressure. And therefore, the government itself is in a total fix that whether it is life or it is economy, and either way, life is at stake. In fact, and I think the life in on the economic terms is more grievous. The problems are more severe. So that really, Nawab, I agree with your point of view that lockdown is no solution. The government will have to come up with a system, but the damage has already been done. That is the most unfortunate part. By the time, because
Yeah,
actually
too much
initially we
time, too
thought
much
that we
time.
would be able to contain Corona through lockdown, which didn't happen. Either of the things have not been done. Then lastly, since we are closing almost, I would, if you allow me, I would like to address one question which has actually emanated from my point of view. Shivam Shukla, who says that hyperinflation would ease the common people, the life of common people in India. Definitely not. Hyperinflation can only be sustained by the super rich class of the economy, any economy. The common man dies out of having no money. So therefore, the common people of India would be severely pained. They would not be able to buy things. That is the problem. That is the problem. Because government, what the government subsidies would be coming, it would largely be coming to the corporate sector. Very recently, you would have heard 68,000 crores of rupees have been exempted, have been pardoned for the corporate sector. Is it for the common man? No, the common man has got 500 rupees in his account. That too in a period of 3 months. So that is there. Second thing is that when you are asking about the startups, upcoming startups, yes, perhaps that is the only silver line at the bottom. If they would be able to survive, some of them, perhaps more of the employment would be created. And I think that could possibly contribute a little. So any other quick observation, or we are almost finished?
Yes, one more observation is this, sir. What do you think about, since the transport system is all at halt and it involves a lot of employment, and it generates a lot of revenue, and it's really makes a circle of the economy. So how do you see the trains, buses, aeroplanes, all kind of public transport
Sir,
getting
actually,
back?
that is,
What the impact of that?
sir, actually, that is why I said that the writing is clear on the wall. Recession is there. The world has never ever experienced complete closure of certain industries.
Exactly.
How
Yes.
can you revive? How you cannot see every airline now must be in debt.
Yes.
If the government is going to bail out, they'll have to come up with thousands of crores of rupees coming out in the economy without any productive input. And this would obviously lead to super hyperinflation, which is a precondition to the recessionary conditions, deep recessionary conditions. So I don't think, perhaps train could be saved because it has come to a halt, though the employees are being paid. It is the largest sector in India, one of the largest employers.
Yes.
And how are we going to meet those challenges? It's a very difficult situation. And the most, I strongly feel that the problem here is that government is not, at least not empathetic. Not to the marginalized group, not even to the corporate sector. Government is in the first place is trying to push a panic button. And when the government start trying to push panic button, the problem is that the confidence is lost at a higher degree rate.
Of course. Yes.
And when the confidence is lost, the economy doesn't work. And I think that responds to the last question as well. Thank you very much. We have already closed. I'm sorry I kept on talking, but I hope and wish that Mario and Nasser Saab, listening to you was a pleasure. Thank you, everybody, being with us. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Looking forward for some future more as well connections. We'll stay in touch.
Sure. We'll get back to you. Nasser Saab, I have your number, Mario's number, Mario, my friend. So we'll just keep in touch. Sure.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you very much.